I'll let you do the intro, Mike.
Yeah, we're here at Vermilion River Beer Company for our second edition of the Advantage podcast, where we talk about all kinds of interesting stories here in the greatest place on earth, Vermilion County, Illinois. And we visit with some of the business leaders of the community, political leaders. We talk about the stories of the people that make Vermilion County work and have a little fun doing it, and veer into some interesting and maybe even hot, controversial topics. We'll see where this goes today. And I had such a good time interviewing Mr. Blackmon in the first episode that I invited him back to be part of this podcast full time. So from now on, I'm going to be Johnny Carson and you'll be my Ed McMahon.
I can laugh.
Well, today we have, very excited to have with us, the president, CEO, majority owner of EnvirOx, Diana Stewart.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I was really excited to be asked to join you guys in this conversation.
We're excited to have you here. And before we get started, I do want to talk about an event that you have coming up here in about a month that you're very excited about for the Survivor Resource Center. Would you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, it's Dancing for the Stars. It's a funny thing how it came about. It was actually Libby Myers, my executive assistant, got a phone call and they wanted to know if I'd be interested in judging the event. They knew that I was past dancer and they tried to get people in the community. And she's the one who recommended that I actually dance in it before even saying anything to me. And she's like, well, wait a minute. And Diana's oldest brother, Brian Stewart, is an Arthur Murray dance studio professional, and they own several franchises up in Chicago. So I roped him into it. So my brother's coming down, and we're dancing together, and it's an amazing cause that's much needed in this and every community. So I encourage everybody to come out and see it at the Fisher.
That's awesome. I was supposed to be a judge.
Yeah?
I won last time. Yeah, I did.
I didn't realize.
I tapped my way into people's hearts, and I took the cheese at the last one. I was very. It was awesome.
Is there a YouTube of this, of you tapping?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You guys should post that link.
Yeah, I might do that. We have some video. Yes, it was fun. What's funny about that is I'm like, nah. I don't think so. And they're like, oh, well, we paired you up with a tap dancer. And I'm like, tap, I'm in. I've always wanted a tap dance. I'm in. So I bought tap shoes. I was all excited. I bought tap shoes and everything. And I tried to even take lessons afterwards, and then my schedule was the worst. So I didn't. And they asked me to be a judge, and I cannot be there because I have an event to work in Champaign. But I wish you the best, and it is such a good time. And it is a great event. And I think we had three or four. We had 4 dancers last time, and I think you have
7 or 8 this time. Yeah.
So that's going to be a fun night for sure. And I didn't realize who your partner was. That's awesome.
Yeah, brothers and sisters never have opportunities to do fun things.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you don't live in the same town. So it's a real opportunity.
Good for you. That'll be great. I wish I could be there, and we'll definitely get some video for that too.
Well, I think we should have a wager here. But guest number 1 on the Advantage, guest number 2, you won it last time. I think that's a challenge. You gotta try.
Oh, wouldn't it be cool? This podcast, we would have, before it even happens, both winners.
We could, yeah. So that's the way that they'll have a money thing involved too. So then you have to kind of hustle the crowd, and so you win People's Choice, which is the money side, and then you win the judges and what have you. And my staff, for whatever reason, happened to be dressed in tracksuits that night. It's a long story. But the staff that came were all dressed in tracksuits, and they went around and intimidated the hell out of the audience for the money. So it looked very Russian mafia.
Oh, my God.
And so we won both. We won
Oh,
we won all the awards. It was great. It was such a fun time. It's good for you. You're going to have so much fun. I'm honestly sad that I can't be there because I was very excited to be a participant this year again. So
We'll definitely make a pitch to the audience to support that. That's March 1st at the Fisher Theater. Awesome. Great event. Definitely encourage everybody to come on out and support that event. So, well, let's get into your story.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first question is we want to hear the Diana Stewart story. You're Danville native, born and raised here, and now CEO of one of the most successful businesses in town. So
thank you.
How did you get here?
Yeah, no, it's kind of an interesting story. You know, I'm second generation ownership CEO of the business, and my father started it back about 1995. And I come from this long line of entrepreneurs in my family. Like, people are not doctors, they're not lawyers, they're artists and entrepreneurs for the most part. And my father is a chemist. Came from the foundry business. A lot of people in this community are familiar with Dynachem. That was my grandfather's and my father's business before it was sold and he moved on. And in that in between, my father has this philosophy about business, which is always have a lifeboat. You know, don't put all your eggs in one basket, more or less. And while he was at Dynachem, he looked out onto all of the different industries and wanted to find some place that he could be disruptive. His sole purpose was, how can I create something new that's patentable, that will go into an industry that I'm unfamiliar with and change things? And I'll be darned if he did it. So he went out and he looked at custodial cleaning chemicals, and that was one that really drew his attention in, because he understood chemistry, he understood chemicals, he understood personal protective equipment and how we protect ourselves from toxic chemicals that can hurt us in short-term and long-term ways. And he realized that custodial workers in particular didn't have even close to the protections that they needed, and the chemicals that they were using every single day were damaging their health, they were damaging the environment, and these are the same spaces that we all spend our time in. He was especially appalled at what he found in grade schools, where the people are very small and they breathe more of the air compared to their body size versus adults. And when they're touching all these surfaces that have these chemical residues on them, it's absorbing into their systems, doing who knows what to their health. He was appalled by that, and it inspired him. And as he learned more about the cleaning chemical industry, he realized that, okay, there is a way to reduce the number of chemicals that need to be used in a facility, to create a technology that simply does not have the same toxicity levels, and all along the way through the value chain of the product, reduce the resource waste. That all of these things are possible, can be done, just nobody's done it. So yeah, he is actually, as we've spoken to veterans in our industry, people who have been there for 50 plus years, they actually credit my dad for creating a whole new category in the industry after 30, 40 years of nothing new being created. So he was the first to patent and invent stabilized hydrogen peroxide cleaning technology. There are a number of other companies out there in the industry now that have found their own ways to do that. That happened actually probably 5 to 8 years after he did his first invention, because it's a really highly effective technology that works great and also achieves everything that he set out to achieve. So we call some of us EnvirOx babies, right? I had no intention of going into the family business, none at all. I was unofficially involved from about age 15. My father would come home and he would be making clay sculptures out of equipment that he was then going to design and build, and it was just a really cool time. And he was on the road a lot, which was hard on the family, but he started taking me with him when I was about 16 years old. So we'd be going out to New Jersey to sit with a distributor, and there'd be this, this really strange dynamic, because our distributors, their job is to beat up the vendor, and the vendor's job, which was us in that situation, was to hold our ground, but keep it friendly at the same time. So I was experiencing these things at a fairly young age, and it started to plant seeds in me. They weren't really strong seeds, because I went to art school. I went to Parsons School of Design, and after that went to Cleveland Institute of Art, and was sure that I was going to be going and getting my master's. And And then towards the end of it, I realized that everything that I was creating in school was about health and environment. Like that was all of my artwork, it was my focus, it was where I was researching. During the summer times, I would come home and my dad would send me on the road and I would train custodians on how to use our products. And I would see firsthand in those environments the meaningful impact that our technology and the safety of it and the health of it and how much easier it made their job because it works so well. And it started making a real difference, like seeing these and connecting with these very real people whose jobs, what they spend most of their time doing, was being changed in this really positive way. And I did this turnabout about 6 months before I graduated college and was like, hey, Dad, like, I care about this. Is there a place for me in the business? He was super excited and started me out in, I started out in marketing because that was at least close to what I had been studying. And from there, really just floated around the organization over the course of 10, 11 years, worked with our research and development teams, worked in a lot of project management because that was just a skill set I was able to bring, built out our marketing department and capability, and really just ended up in the position after so many years that we found ourselves, oddly enough, kind of in between presidents. My father had moved on his way, and we as executives were trying to figure out what to do next. We're like, okay, do we hire someone from the outside? Like Pete, you were talking about earlier, like, you know, you can go out and just hire a CEO or hire a president. And it was my executive team, my peers around me, who were like, you know, Diana, we think it's you. We think you're ready for this. And I was about 34 years old, which is a little young to be named president of a national scope organization. But I've been blessed with an incredible team. I mean, the people at EnvirOx are extraordinary, and down to every single one of them, the commitment that everyone brings to each other and to the organization is what's made us successful.
Well, I mean, you were there when the song was written. You were part of writing it. I use that allusion to songwriting and what have you often. But you were there to help write the company tune. You were there when it was written, and to bring in somebody else to sing it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I completely understand. I also think, you know, entrepreneurs equivalates capitalism, right? I mean, you often think like, hey, you know, self-starters, you're all going to make your own money, and it's just all about the green. In this case, it was very much about the green. But I think there's something to be said about the marketability of good, right? The marketability of altruism and something that is actually a positive force, not only in the community but in the global economy. And so not only is it successful, but it is doing something good for our community, for our environment. So I think that's great. Most people don't see that, you know, you can actually market good.
Yeah, well, actually, it's great that you brought up just that phrasing, because we've, as a whole organization, over the past 6 months, have been working on redefining our core values. We had originally what started the company, and they have absolutely inspired us over these years, but we've changed a lot. The environment's changed a lot, the world's changed a lot. We have all of these new people, we've got a lot younger people in the organization, so we've done multiple exercises as a whole company, like, okay, like what are our values? What's going to resonate with every single person who works in this organization? And our core value statement that's still taking form, but it starts with EnvirOx, we do well by doing good. And that's a principle that my father brought into the organization. And as we went through how we've changed, we're like, this is still the same. Like, this is what we believe. And a big part of that in COVID was actually when we really learned and saw this about ourselves, is that we care so much about each other in this like almost like tribe environment within EnvirOx that it is ahead of profit decisions. And through COVID, all of our decisions were rooted in protecting our people. livelihoods, careers, financially, physically, and those were some really rough years from a financial standpoint. Like, we had some really, really scary months, but we were committed. Everyone's going to keep their job and everyone's going to be physically safe. And that's just where we put our anchor. So we learned a lot about ourselves in that, and everything that's come since then is, oh, yes, it's doing well by doing good, and also how we care about each other is the most important thing we do.
I want to expound on that point. I think that's a great point that you bring up, because I was out about a month ago to EnvirOx, and we actually talked about this podcast, and then your HR manager gave me a tour of the facility, and it had been a while since I was able to tour the facility. And any time that I meet with Vermilion Advantage members, we talk about one issue that always comes up, because it's such a huge issue for all of the businesses in our community, is the workforce issue and the availability of workforce. And one thing that I was very impressed in my conversation with Katie, your HR manager, was she talked about that family environment that you've created with your workforce. And it's not that you don't have workforce challenges, as we all do, but I feel very strongly that some of our Vermilion Advantage members have really kind of figured out the workforce issue better than others, because they really manage the workforce issue very intensely, and they treat their workforce as a family. And so I wanted to bring that up, because that's where we've gone in the conversation, and I think that's very impressive. It's very far-sighted, and I think you're really setting yourself up for success, because I think we're going to continue to see challenges in the workforce, having that available workforce as we go forward. So I commend you on that, and yeah, share your thoughts with us on that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, because it's two things. If I'm being completely honest, I'm not a great capitalist. Most of our culture in our company is inspiring, because it feels really, really good to go to a place every single day that is psychologically safe for everyone, where people feel, we joke about it sometimes, because someone will have like a really busy or rough weekend, and they'll feel like they're coming to work for, to relax a little bit. And we joke about it, but it's also true in so many ways. So there's a huge payoff for that, for every individual human in that facility. But there's also a business case for it. We have very little turnover. We have extreme commitment from individuals, and we've been able to foster an environment where they have autonomy to make choices and decisions, and do it using their expertise and using process that leverages the resources and the people around them. Now, what that means is that we can trust everyone who works for us, and we can trust them to tell us the truth and work with us. They serve their customers with the way that they feel. They serve our customers with the way they feel about their work, which means our customers are getting incredible service, which we get feedback about all the time. There's just this whole domino effect. And also whenever there's a circumstance that's financial in nature, take, everything that happened in COVID, we have this entire group of people who probably make spending choices about our organizational money more carefully than they do their own. So there's all of this business reason to do it for anyone who doesn't, who's a little skeptical, because it is a lot of time. We shut down the whole functionality of the company with regularity to spend time together.
At some point, whether it doesn't matter, at some point you can only actually pay people so much.
Oh yeah.
Right? So the reason to come to work has to be bigger and much more important than the paycheck. I think. Now, don't get me wrong.
Everyone has to make money.
Everybody has to make money, and they should. And I hope everybody can make as much as they possibly can. I believe that, but there has to be something more. There just has to be, and you're a testament to that clearly, because to retain the staff that you have, it's more than the money. It has to be. I was at a restaurant a few weeks ago, a Danville-owned restaurant, and it occurred to me that half of the staff there was there when I moved here in '96.
Oh, wow.
Right? And I just couldn't stop thinking about that. And what a great, they must be a great employer. Automatically, right? I'm sure the money's decent. I'm sure they take care of their employees, but they take care of their employees in a way that's much bigger than the dollar. So I understand that. Kudos to you on that, to be able to create something that keeps people coming to work. And, one thing I learned over, my tenure and whatever is that, trusting those people to make those decisions. I mean, you can recover from a bad decision.
Yeah.
You can recover from most bad decisions, let's say. But indecision will just eat you alive. And so to be able to entrust your employees to make those decisions, whether or not they're always going to be 100% right or not, that's bold to me.
Well, and that's where the psychological safety comes in, because people will make poor choices. They will have the wrong information. Sometimes it'll be a really expensive mistake. And being able to give that person grace and understand that they did their best and know that it's still worth providing the autonomy and for them to add that value. And just being able to, deal with it gracefully when something's cost a lot of money and someone, didn't make the right choice. The reality is that while it's not as visible, those of us running companies do that all the time.
Yeah, sure.
So, it's like giving everyone the same grace we give ourselves.
It's
But that
behind the
psychological
curtain.
safety is serious.
It's empathy, right? Which is, to me, is the heart of leadership. It's understanding that we all make mistakes. And, when I look in the mirror, I'm looking at a person that makes more mistakes than probably anybody does. And so I think having that realization as a leader, as the head of a company, is so critically important. And it does create such a wonderful environment. I wish we could bottle that attitude up and give it to all of our members, because, certainly the workforce availability issue, it's a huge issue that we're facing on a national level. Everywhere, not just in Danville, Illinois. It's happening everywhere, and it's complex. There's a lot of different facets to it. But I think if people could understand that approach and take that approach, they would go a long ways towards solving a lot of their problems. And so, kudos to you for being that forward thinking about it.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. But we have this gift, which is that my father brought that into the organization. It wasn't there from the moment it started. We were a completely normal, dysfunctional manufacturing facility those first 5 years of the organization. Luckily, I was in college during that time. So I witnessed it from afar, but it wasn't a place that I would have chosen to go work. I really came into the organization within the same year or two that my father was bringing these concepts and starting to spend a lot of money to change the organization by having a corporate culture coach come and work with us, employees, executives, whole company together multiple times a year, of shutting down working, bringing everybody to the days in, and doing all of these different, in some ways, extreme practices. We had one of the first things that we did as an organization, it was called the Leonardo process. And our corporate culture coach, Fleet Mall, took us through it. And we all got sticky notes and pens. And essentially, the gist of it is that everybody with a fair bit of anonymity was able to write down everything that they felt was going wrong in the organization and not working, and just go and put it on the board. We ended up with this huge wall of sticky notes, and that wall was terrifying. You're talking about every bad thing that you can imagine going on in an organization without people knowing it was happening in that 35, 40 person organization. And, my father didn't look at that and say, hey, this is too big. Let's go back to the way things were. We're growing, we're making money, let's not worry about it. He doubled down. And it took a lot of years of just continuing to work on that and getting the bus right. Getting the right people who wanted this type of organization to be part of it, because not everybody does. And watching over these years what it requires, because as a leader in that type of organization, you have to bring your best self. We all have our best selves and our worst selves. And it's asking every executive and then every manager in that organization to have this above the line perspective where you're taking accountability and responsibility, almost like radical responsibility for your own behaviors, and then asking that of others. It is intense, but I would invite anybody to go on that journey.
It takes a certain amount of bravery to have a suggestion box.
Yeah.
But it takes serious guts to put that in the break room.
Exactly.
And actually hear the negatives from the people that you're paying, right? From the people that you think you're taking care of, to find out that there's things wrong.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, and we try to normalize it. I mean, it's normalizing it, because you can't make everyone happy. Everyone's not going to be happy. That's just always true, no matter what.
Yep.
And it's really thickening our own skin as leaders to be able to take all of that feedback as feedback that's important, and be open-minded, and then sort through it and be like, okay, what things do we need to shift about our organization? And it's not something that you can do and then you're fine and you move on. We're doing that perpetually every quarter, but it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. I just like saying this because it's so much fun. We've been growing double digits for 3 years now. And it's been a really exciting time, and the whole team is just clicking together, and it's all this work we put into it.
Do you know, I'm sure you do, where you started in terms of employees and where you are today? What's your growth from that side of it?
It's actually been about the same number
Has
of
it really?
people. From when I joined the company 22 years ago, we're right around 35, and now sometimes we have 43.
Wow.
Yeah, and so much of that is because of, again, the business case for it. We have so many people who have cross-trained and lifted their skill set and are able to fill in for one another, so people can still, take their vacations, have their flex time, do this stuff, but we're still able to keep our organization relatively small from a people standpoint. And we actually predict at this point that we could probably double and really just add a handful of positions.
So do you outsource production?
Everything's done here.
So those 35 people make the product?
Yeah. All EnvirOx chemical is made in Danville, Illinois.
Wow.
Yeah, get shipped all over the country, and a little bit into Canada, and a little bit into Mexico, and some of the Virgin Islands and things like that.
That's impressive. That's really impressive.
It's neat. We actually, as our growth momentum started picking up several years ago, and we'd grow a little bit over the years, but it was always a struggle. We'd grow 3% or 5%, and we're trying so hard. And then just all of the decisions, at least the good ones that we've made over the past 10, 15 years, have started clicking together. And I worry hard and early. That's how I'm made. So last year, and I was laughing with one of our managers about this recently. Last year, I got all the managers and executives together, and I'm like, okay, guys, we need to do all of this predictive work to figure out what resources we're going to need, because we keep on growing these double digits, and that's just so much more volume of product, and where the crack's going to show up, and everybody, they always do this, and it's really lovely. They listened to me, and we did a bunch of this stuff, and we got to the end of it, and they're like, okay, we think this is good enough, Diana. I'm like, okay. But as it turns out, people haven't had to do overtime. we haven't, I mean, it's just been remarkable. Everyone has been able to get more and more efficient with time and with resources, that we've just been able to grow as an organization millions and millions and millions of dollars over the past 3 years and hire like 2 new people. I mean, it's like we're all just sort of like, holy cow, look at all of us go. It is an exciting time.
That's awesome. It sounds like if you ever get tired of shipping cleaning products to the world, you've got a future in corporate leadership and really teaching what looks like a very, very successful model.
The EnvirOx model.
The EnvirOx model. Well, we learned everything we do from other brilliant people.
Yeah.
But I would just for this, anyone in this community who's a business leader who wants to learn anything or everything about what we've done, I am an absolute open book on it, and would love to share the details and the resources with anyone.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was another thing that came up during our visit last month that Katie brought up as well during our visit, where she had made mention of the fact that Vermilion Advantage used to have industry cluster meetings on a regular basis, and Vickie had put those together, and it was a great forum for business leaders like yourself to discuss with other leaders what issues they were facing and kind of get everybody's take on how to solve those problems. And so I took that back, and we are in the process of scheduling a cluster meeting.
Excellent.
And so, but I wanted to bring that up because I do think there's a lot of room for that, I think, to have that collaboration back in this community between all of our businesses. Not that we don't have it now, but that's something Vermilion Advantage needs to do a better job of providing that forum, because a rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing. We're all in this together, and a lot of people can benefit from your experience. And I think there are other people that have similar experiences that have a lot to share as well. So I wanted to mention that because the visit we had a month ago was very valuable from my standpoint, and we're taking action on that. So
Thank you. Katie will be thrilled to hear that.
Well, so one thing I wanted to bring up during our conversation is somebody that we both know. You knew her on a level that I don't think any of the rest of us did. And so I am the president and CEO of Vermilion Advantage, which was an organization that was basically started and ran by, for most of its existence, a woman who was very instrumental in building this community, Vickie Haugen. And so I always want to give respect to Vickie in the fact that Vermilion Advantage was Vickie Haugen, and Vickie Haugen was Vermilion Advantage, and I have shoes that I'll never be able to fill on that level. But Vickie was a very strong leader in our community, and I know from being in a leadership role that that's a tough position to be in, and you're not going to make everybody happy. And I know there's probably a long list of people that think Mike Marron's the biggest jerk that ever lived, and that's just the nature of leadership, and Vickie was not immune to that at all. And so I know, looking back on my relationship with her, I know it had its ups and downs, and there were times when her and I didn't see eye to eye. We butted heads, and looking back now, I think it was just two very strong-willed people that had their viewpoint on what we thought was best for the community, and at the time it didn't particularly align, and so there was going to be understandable clashes. But I always think that she had what was best for the community in her heart. That was her priority. And so but you got to see Vickie on a level that none of us did. And I do have to admit too that since being in this position, I have a completely new respect for some of the challenges she faced.
I didn't even think she had a home. I thought she lived at Vermilion Advantage. I had no idea she went home ever.
So this is a really that's a great inroad. So like my personal relationship with Vickie, she came into my life when I was about right in between like 9 and 10 years old, like early 10 years old. I'm getting a new perspective of that now because that's about like my girls are 10. So now I'm seeing what it's like to be around a 10-year-old girl. So she started dating my father, and they got married, and she came into my life and really came in a powerful way very early. Like it was a time in my life where I didn't have a whole lot of female role models in my life. And it's one thing to come into someone's life as a stepmom. It's another thing to come in immediately deeply committed. And that's how she came in. So the commitment that the community saw and recognized and benefited from Vickie and her role with Vermilion Advantage, she lived her life that way. There wasn't a single person in Vickie's life who didn't experience that kind of commitment from her. And having her in my life that way was completely life-changing. The things that she saw my interest in and got me engaged in, it probably changed my entire trajectory in life from something that could have been, a kid from divorced parents and a weird broken home to someone who started to see the world differently. She changed the way that I saw the world, and she'd take me up to Chicago, and she'd take me to Broadway shows and take me to nice restaurants and really just open things up for me in terms of what's possible. But she had also extremely good work-life boundaries. She could have taught a master class in it. Vickie was home, and this is like I'm in like middle school and high school during this time. Vickie comes home around 5:30 every night. She doesn't talk about work. She has her glass of white Zinfandel, and she cooks everybody a beautiful dinner. A beautiful
I heard she was an amazing
multi-course dinner every night. Every night.
I heard she was an amazing cook.
She did these amazing brunches on the weekends for all of us, and she insisted upon a family dynamic that I had never been part of before, where we were all spending time together. We were sitting down at the table together every single night. We were talking about our days. We were doing all of those best practices, and I would have never known that type of thing even existed without her. And then after that, Vickie made my lunches for school. And she didn't just make my lunches. I had hordes of friends who would be like hovering, being like, "What'd Vickie make you today?" Because she would make these bagel sandwiches. Oh gosh, help me remember. What was the name of the cafe that was here? It was right down
Java
there.
Hut?
The Java Hut.
Yeah.
They had those awesome bagel sandwiches. So she would recreate the bagel sandwich for my 7th grader lunch. And she would do that all the way into high school. And she was engaged in my dance competition stuff and my show choir stuff. And so yes, she was putting everything into Vermilion Advantage, but she always put everything to her family too.
It's crazy. And again, to say that she went home at 5:30 and made dinner, in my head, she was there at 9 o'clock at night. But I never saw it. That's what you thought.
Yeah.
She was always on when it came to work.
She was often working after all those things.
Sure.
Yeah, into the evening, but
fascinating.
Yeah, it was. She was an incredibly special person, and I think that it's a very demanding job, and lots of people would have this even venom towards her, and it was just always interesting to me because I'm like, oh gosh, there is no one who has probably put, Danville was her life's work, and it wasn't because she had to do it. There were plenty of times when much larger cities wanted Vickie to be the head of their economic development because they saw the kinds of results she did, but her commitment to this community was unbreakable. And she worked for this community literally until she couldn't.
Yeah. When we opened, when Vermilion River Beer Company opened in 2019, she emailed me and said, "You're not a member we still want to put you on the front cover of our next newsletter. And I was floored by that. I was completely floored by that because we didn't earn it. We just opened. I mean, I didn't think we'd make it past the week, and that was the last interaction we had. But it was such a gracious thing to do, considering, there's so many members, and obviously we became a member, but, at the time we weren't members of anything at that moment, But I'll never forget that she did that for us. We hang that somewhere. It's hanging on the wall in here, that front cover.
Yeah.
That was because of her. So
I think it's important to hear those stories because, you got to see that side of her that none of the rest of us did. And it's just a very unique story, I think, that tells her story and what she was all about, which is very impressive. And it's a story that needs to get out there more, I think, of the human being that she was. The other thing, I think, like I said, I have got a whole new appreciation for the challenges that she had now that I've been in this position. And of course, she was in this position for so many years, and I've only been here for a year. So I haven't even begun to see the challenges that she faced. But the other thing is, too, and I think I'm guessing that this is something that she was probably quite a role model for you. Being a very professional woman in business, that presented, especially in the time that she was in that role, probably presented a whole nother level of challenges that I'll never experience. So, but probably also provided a very strong role model for you and your current career, I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that from a professional standpoint, Vickie always had impeccable self-control. And I watched that in her daily interactions and in intense circumstances where someone was potentially being very rude or very sexist or very dismissive. And I'd watch her handle it with such grace and confidence. And to have the self-awareness and the self-control in the moment to behave that way through your life, day in and day out, especially under that type of stress and pressure. I think professionally that made a really big impact, big impression on me, being able to see that.
A calm response from Vickie could be as scary as anything.
Yes.
It was. I've seen very few pull that off, and I was never the brunt of that, by the way. But she definitely was able to remain always well spoken and always calm, and at the same time, you knew you were getting your butt handed to you.
Yeah, I had a couple of those experiences during high school.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah. Sure. Interesting. So I'm sure Mike has more questions. I have a question. You're now in that entrepreneurial spirit environment. Other than your dancing career, what is there something big in the works for you? For you, not EnvirOx, for you.
Oh, for me. Well, everything feels everything feels pretty big right now. My girls are going to be 11 in April. It's just nuts. And I have spent the last 3-ish years very intentionally shrinking down my commitments to the things that are absolutely most important to me, so that all of my energy, my presence, my focus is going to this very small handful of things. By nature, I'm an introvert. And the best definition that I've heard of extrovert versus introvert is extroverts get their energy from people. They go to a party and they're energized by it. I go to a party, I love the people, I have a great time, but I am so exhausted afterwards that I need to nap for the next 24 hours. So I have to be careful with my energy. So all of this to say that I am so focused on my children and so focused on EnvirOx and some of those close relationships that are the most dear to me. And I don't have a whole lot of anything left for everything else. I'm really excited about starting my garden this spring. I've started daydreaming about, what I'm going to plant and things like that. But I try to keep the rest of my life pretty quiet so that I can just really focus on the people and the things that I care about most. So it's actually a lot of work. It requires a lot of saying no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can understand that, definitely.
Does art pop up occasionally?
Well, that's part of it. So, like, in that mix of people that I'm caring for, like, I am part of that. And I find that the ways that I re-energize. Thank you. I'm like, that did not come out. Re-energize. I think I just made up a word. Is making art. So I'm a drawer. That's what I do. And I get to do that with my kids too. So like we journal and we draw together, and it doesn't really matter to me if anybody ever sees it. It's my way of.
It's your release.
Yeah.
It's your
Yeah, it's my way of remembering what it is to like just be me.
Huh.
So.
That takes a lot of commitment, I can imagine.
Yeah. Well, everything in our lives is pulling us to say yes to everything, and it's relentless. It's completely relentless. And a lot of things that I say no to, it's not because I don't like them, it's not because I don't want to do them, it's because I know I have to choose. So.
One question on that same note, for various reasons, how many boards do you sit on?
None. And I get asked, and I have sat on a number of them, and I was just recently asked again. And if I do that, I know what's going to be sacrificed. And I'm not doing the sacrifice now. I mean, maybe when my kids are older.
Yeah.
But like, this is pivotal time for me. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's hard no's. It's difficult to say no.
Yep. But I think you're absolutely correct in that determination for yourself. I think more people should be.
Yeah, and it's a timing thing. It absolutely is a timing thing. It's like the decisions that I'm making right now aren't necessarily going to be the same as they are in 3 years. So
I'm jealous of it. I am.
It's taken a lot of work. I had to untether myself from a whole host of things in order to get where I am. And it did take 3 years. It took every bit of 3 years to untether myself from all of the life stuff that I had said yes to, even including like downsizing from a larger house to a smaller one. I'm just like, okay, I need to simplify all of this. Otherwise, all of these things that I want most of my life are just going to pass me by.
That is amazing. And I have a 14-year-old daughter, and it just goes fast. And so, that's impressive. It's impressive that you prioritize that because, when they're off to college, I saw a statistic the other day, like when your child turns 18 and moves away, you've spent like 95%
I was just watching
time.
a movie that made that statement last night, that it's 92% of your time with your kid is 0 through 18.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why I think, it's so important because you will never get that time back.
Yeah.
And it's something that it eats at me every day because the first 14 years went by pretty quick. And I know that the next 3.5 are going to fly by. So yeah, that's pretty cool that you got your priorities, I think, straight. And, but they're 10, so like here in 8 years we can tap you for Vermilion Advantage.
I have a feeling that they're going to start ignoring me in some amount of time.
That's
here.
fine.
Yeah, like 3 to 5 years. See, I'm holding on as long as I can. I'm saying 3 to 5 years they'll start like meaningfully ignoring me, and I'll have to start building my other activities. So, yeah.
Wow. Again, I think it's envy. That's something that you could probably also teach a lesson on.
Yeah.
So I think people can learn a lot from that commitment. So.
Well, one last thing I would like to ask. So Vermilion Advantage, you are, of course, EnvirOx is a member. And we always want to figure out what we can be doing better to help you succeed, to help EnvirOx be even more successful than it is. So just, be very, very candid with us. What do we do? What can we do better? What can we do to help you?
Well, I'm gonna go back to a community approach. I'm gonna go back to a lot of what I saw Vickie building over those years. Is that I do personally believe that a strong and healthy and vibrant middle class is extremely important for every community. In order for that to happen, there have to be great employers. And I feel like this community, like we've been on a pendulum for as long as anyone can remember. And I think that the more really good employers, large employers that can be brought into this community that give good health benefits, that check those boxes that people really need in their lives to be able to live well, is the most important thing. And that isn't EnvirOx specific, but it is, because we all live here, we work here, and that's true for every single one of my employees, where if this community is a stronger place economically, if the people are well cared for, then again, it's, I think you said it earlier, rising tide,
Lifts all boats. Yep. Great. You got anything else, Pete?
I don't. I mean, I could go on for days, so I won't.
We got some talkers.
It's just thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll have second half interviews with some of these people. I would definitely like to have you back.
We can do one about dancing.
We can do the recap on the dance. There you go.
Well, thank you very much for being a part of this. And you've got a very compelling story. And EnvirOx has a compelling story. And whether you're involved in boards or not, you're a great community leader. And we appreciate you taking the time to be here and to share some of your experiences with us this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys doing this. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you.
You bet. Stay tuned. We will be out with another episode in a short amount of time with another community leader.